Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the third and final part in Fritz Peters' trilogy on his time and life spent with Gurdjieff. This is Balanced Man, and if you're new to the channel, hello, this is Book Club, and we read all sorts of books, but I have a particular affinity for Mr. Gurdjieff and his work, The Fourth Way, and so we focus a lot on the Gurdjieff work. You can go back and look in the playlist section of the channel and go and enjoy In Search of the Miraculous, or Meetings with Remarkable Men, or even Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, or the first two of Fritz Peters' works, Boyhood with Gurdjieff and Gurdjieff Remembered. But now we begin the third in this series, Balanced Man, a look at Gurdjieff 50 years later. And so I'm very pleased to be able to share this with you, and I'll just read the blurb before we begin. In his earlier books, Boyhood with Gurdjieff and Gurdjieff Remembered, published together in one volume by Wildwood House under the title Gurdjieff, Fritz Peters vividly recreated his association with the unpredictable and extraordinary teacher-mystic G.I. Gurdjieff. Many agree that Peters' account of Gurdjieff and life in general, it was usually anything but general, at the Institute for the Harmonious Development of Man, the Château du Prieuré, Fontainebleau, Avon, France, during the 20s, has been the most touchingly human of all biographical materials available on the subject, and I think I'd agree with that. It's very humanizing and very touching. Balanced Man is much more than a sequel to the first two books. It is the author's mature evaluation of what precisely is the essence of the Gurdjieff teaching. It is the practical, empirical, definitive summary of this teaching by his perpetual student. Mr. Peters has studied the Gurdjieff approach to living and self-awareness for over 50 years. He shares the impact of this commitment here in his most recent work. And this is published in 1978. So, of course, later than the first two, and this is actually a first edition. And I believe it went out of print very quickly, so it's quite a rare and hard to come by book. And so, yes, we're going to learn some more about Gurdjieff from Fritz Peters, but I imagine focusing more on the ideas. And I'll just do a bit of a teaser before I do all of the formalities, but it's such an interesting opening sentence, especially for myself who's published a text on Gurdjieff. The opening sentence is, "Why would anyone write, let alone ask a reader to read, another book about Gurdjieff and his work?" So, yeah, I don't know if that's a challenge or a way of dissuading a writer or saying what more could be written and spoken about Gurdjieff, but I had a little peek at that and thought it was very interesting. And so, yes, we're going to work through this tonight. We'll come back on Sunday, I think, and then... Oh, no, not Sunday, excuse me. No Sunday this week, Monday. And then we'll finish it next week. And then that will free us up for Dostoevsky's The Double. So if you're interested in all of that, Fritz Peters, Balanced Man, Ouspensky's The Fourth Way, Dostoevsky's The Double, as well as all the other books that we have to read coming up here at the channel, please consider liking the video, subscribe to the channel, share the show with all of your like-minded friends if you're lucky enough to have them. The app I've been working hard on, and there is 2 new Beelzebub chapters, chapter 31, Hypnotism, and chapter 32, Beelzebub as a Professional Hypnotist, will be coming tomorrow. And of course, as I just mentioned, why would anyone write, let alone ask someone to read a book on Gurdjieff, but if you are interested, of course, you can find my own writing in the video description. And I'll just say hello to the chat. Blasphemy B Nanas is so excited, so I'm happy to hear that. That makes two of us. Hello there, Jude and Vicky Wilson. Welcome. Stephen Lance here says, good evening, world. Graham Fortunes come in, says, hi all. Tim Jim, hi there, my friend, says, evening all. J.K. Techers, long time no see. I hope you're well. Says, good evening, Lewis and all. Jean Harris is here. Says, hi, Lewis. Hi, all. How you all doing? I am very well. Graham says, hi to Blasphemous Banana. Blasphemous Banana says, hi. The infamous Graham of Book Club is here, and he certainly is, hoping to spice up the live reading and offer his valuable insights and wisdom. So welcome, everyone. And I think that's enough for introductions today. Like I say, this is my favorite sort of book to read at book club because I've never read it before. Of course, all of the Gurdjieff clubbers and people interested in philosophy and spirituality are also interested. And so it kills probably 3 or 4 birds with one stone. And I'm very pleased about that. But let us begin. Like I say, we'll probably read for about an hour or so. And no doubt there will be lots to discuss because Fritz Peters seems to have that effect on the channel. Give us a lot to discuss. But this is Balanced Man, a look at Gurdjieff 50 years later by Fritz Peters. Chapter 1. Why would anyone write, let alone ask a reader to read, another book about Gurdjieff and his work? I am in a reasonably good position to ask and answer that question because, 1. In my first 2 books, Boyhood with Gurdjieff and Gurdjieff Remembered, I was unable and to some extent unwilling to write everything that I could have written. 2. Some people who had been associated with Gurdjieff and with me, notably Jane Heap and Margaret Anderson, as well as John G. Bennett, Mr. and Madame Ouspensky, were still alive, and Victor Golantz, who more or less commissioned my first 2 books, and I agreed that material about such people was better left unsaid, not so much for fear of libel suits, but rather because certain facts about one's association with living people might be embarrassing to them or could give rise to gossip, arguments, misinterpretation, and even maliciousness, which could be painful or harmful. And 3. I recently reread The Unknowable Gurdjieff by Margaret Anderson, and while Margaret said to me the last time I saw her in 1965, Fritz, why don't you tell the real story about your life with Gurdjieff? You could do it in plain English. I did not feel at that time that I could, and I was not prepared to say anything in depth about his work for a very simple reason. The results of my relationship with Gurdjieff had not really come together in me yet. And there's a little note here about Margaret Anderson. Margaret Anderson, born in 1887, died in 1974, was the founder of the Little Review and the aunt of the author. She was largely responsible for his presence at the Priory from 1924 to 1929. In her last book, The Strange Necessity, she writes, Mind to mind, I have a great bond with my nephew Fritz Peters, a brilliant example of the mental emotional type. And I have Margaret Anderson's book, The Unknowable Gurdjieff, so maybe we can get that in a to-be-read pile very soon and see what that has to offer. So much for reasons. Having known Gurdjieff intermittently from 1923 to 1947 as a child and as a young man, I now feel that it is perhaps my obligation to write something more about him. To quote Margaret Anderson again, she writes, quote, When I remember what pains he took to make plain some of his most difficult teaching, I think someone should try at least to make plain his function, what he called his obligation, end quote. My previous books were written, as I have said, largely at the behest of Victor Golantz, who felt that I had something special to write because, as he put it, quote, You are the only person who was there at the Priory as a child who is now literate." End quote. At that time, about 1960, I was still labouring under the impression that I was special, the real son of a Messiah. In an emotional sense, I was Gurdjieff's son. I loved him more than anyone I had ever known. But times change. Victor Gollancz's reasoning is no longer compelling, and I no longer feel like anyone's son. So, again, he's, I imagine, like everyone who wrote something, much of what was published in the Gurdjieff work, everything was published posthumously, right, after their death. Gurdjieff, I believe, was waiting for Ouspensky to publish In Search of the Miraculous, waiting for the ideas to become available in book form. But Ouspensky never did it. He never published it. It was only after he passed away. And like Fritz Peters is saying, and Margaret Anderson, you know, writing about someone who's alive, it has a different taste. And Graham says, "I've been rereading Unknowable Gurdjieff over the weekend. It's an excellent book for the channel." So there you have it. There is many books, though, that I would like to read. Still at the channel, I think, of course, Unknowable Gurdjieff, as Graham's just pointed out, would be good. Idiots in Paris, which is J.G. Bennett from 1949, the last years of Gurdjieff's life, and also Our Life with Mr. Gurdjieff, Thomas and Olga de Hartmann. So we have much to read still. But for now, we're reading Balanced Man. Chapter 2. In Gurdjieff Remembered, I wrote the following. So here we have a whole page quote from Gurdjieff Remembered. "Must make announcement," Gurdjieff said dramatically and in English. Several nationalities were represented, but all the people there I knew spoke or understood English. "My last book is now finished except for work with editor." He paused, looked around the room as if to examine each person separately and intently, and then continued. "This mean my work is through, finished. This also have very important meaning for me. Mean at last I can die." There was another pause, but his inflection indicated that the sentence was not finished. "But not just because book is finished. In life is only necessary for man to find one person to whom can give accumulation of learning in life. When find such receptacle, then is possible die." He smiled benevolently and went on. "So now two good things happen for me. I finish work, and I also find one person to whom can give results my life's work." He raised his arm again, started to move it, this time with a finger extended and pointing around the room, and then stopped when his finger was pointing directly at me. And if you are with us for Gurdjieff Remembered, you will of course remember that a rather sensational section. Back to Fritz. "I have had a good many repercussions from that paragraph, mostly from seekers, members of Gurdjieff groups who, for reasons best known to them, are dissatisfied. Such people frequently write to authors or even telephone them because, particularly in my opinion, in the United States, people like either to meet or at least talk with or correspond with so-called famous people, movie stars, painters, writers, you name it. I don't misunderstand this phenomenon. Being an American, I have the same kind of interest in celebrities. My argument, however, is that such people usually go beyond the act of simple meeting, writing to, or talking to in the celebrity in question. In my case, what they generally want to know is whether I am really Gurdjieff's heir and or son. That is a difficult question for me to answer because I don't know in my heart that I am anything other than myself. I also know, obviously, that Gurdjieff called me his real son. This is not a great dilemma for me in one sense. It is, however, an enigma of my life with which I have to live. Occasionally, with some misgivings, I agreed to a meeting with some seeker, and the following conversation, exchange may be a better word, is typical. "It's a privilege to meet you, Mr. Peters." "Thank you very much. May I ask you a few questions?" "I assume that's what you're here for, so, by all means, fire away." "Well, I feel confused. I need to work out some problems, and I think I need help. I am unhappy and dissatisfied with what I have found in Gurdjieff group so far, and after trying to read his books, but after reading your books, I began to feel that perhaps you could help me. The groups are so serious, so grim." "Well, the Gurdjieff work is serious, so that does not surprise me. But I do know what you mean. They seem to lack a sense of humour. But as far as helping you is concerned, I don't know exactly what you mean. Help you what? I'm not a teacher or a psychiatrist." "I know that, but you really knew Gurdjieff. Your books have the ring of truth about them." "Thank you again, but I still don't honestly know what you want from me. The Gurdjieff groups are, as far as I know, sincere, honest, and are certainly trying, even if you don't happen to feel you are getting anything from them, to transmit what Gurdjieff taught. In what way could I do it better?" "Well, I want to know what Gurdjieff's teaching was all about, really. The groups don't tell me that." I shrugged my shoulders. I knew the man and loved him, but I don't think that I know very much about his work in any intellectual sense. We didn't have groups at the Priory in the sense that they have them now. On the other hand, it was Gurdjieff himself who started the groups here in America and elsewhere, so they must be in some way part of his purpose. "I suppose they are, but something seems to be missing. What was he like, really?" "I described him in my books to the best of my ability." "I know you did, but what an experience for you. Don't you feel that you were chosen or awfully lucky?" "Lucky? No. Fortunate, perhaps, but I had nothing to do with that. I happened to be there, and he chose me, if you wish, but I still don't know what I can do for you." "Well, I want to know what you know." At this point I feel frustrated and in a way trapped. "It has taken me over 50 years to find out what I know. What do you want to do? Spend 50 years with me?" "I'm desperate. I need to know it now." "Why now? How can you learn anything now? It's a life work, a way of life. There isn't anything to know. The work is not something you can suddenly know." "But I can't wait." "Then I can only suggest that you do something else." "You mean you won't help me?" I shake my head. "I only mean that I can't help you. I can't submit to your desperation. In any event, no one can do anything for you. You have to do it yourself. I can't learn for you, and I am not, I repeat, a teacher." "Won't you at least be my friend?" Won't you at least be my friend?" "I can be anyone's friend, but on the assumption that friendship is mutually rewarding, what are you offering me? Why would I want to be your friend?" "You mean that you want a reward?" I shake my head again. "No, I mean that friendship automatically is a two-way street. It has to be mutually rewarding. That's a law of nature." "All right, I'll buy that. Will you be my friend?" "I don't know, not yet. And what you want, unless I am mistaken, is to pick my brains in the process of this friendship, right?" Coldly then, "I could pay you." "How much and for what? How do you know that you will get anything?" His turn to smile at me. "I thought so. You're just a materialist like everything." His turn to smile at me. "I thought so. You're just a materialist like everyone else." My turn. "I doubt that. I didn't come to you, did I?" So much for my desire to teach. In Kenneth Walker's Venture with Ideas, there is an excellent description of the way Gurdjieff himself began to learn. And here we have a quote from Venture with Ideas, quote, "The young Gurdjieff showed a great interest in science, and it was no hardship for him to have to study the subjects preliminary to his course in medicine. It would indeed have been difficult to name any subject in which the boy was not keenly interested, and the danger which threatened him was that his energies would become dissipated over too wide a field. Unwittingly, his father increased this risk. The great thing in education, he declared, is not to accumulate a vast store of information, but to learn how to learn. In order to teach his own son how to learn, he adopted a certain procedure. The boy was set a certain piece of work to do with his hands, and as soon as he had discovered the right technique for doing it, this work was immediately stopped and another entirely different type of work begun. By this means, the useful Gurdjieff rapidly learned a number of different trades." End quote. This method of teaching, although modified by the needs of maintaining and running a large establishment, was a definite part of life at the Priory. We learned how to do practically everything that can be done physically, in the house, in the gardens, with the animals, in the kitchen, and the accumulation of facts or information was at a real minimum. So compare that, and this becomes apparent if you read Joseph Azizi's book on Gurdjieff, how Gurdjieff's techniques and the way he taught and what he taught changed very drastically from his time with Ouspensky, 1915 to 20, the time at the Priory from 20 to sort of 26, 27. Azizi reckons he goes quiet for much of the 30s, or not much happens, just perhaps the women of the rope and these small groups in Paris. And then towards the end, he works with Helen and George Addy, and also J.G. Bennett goes back, also Fritz Peters goes back. And so there's that aspect of the life of Gurdjieff, how he stopped teaching all of the metaphysical and psychological and cosmological stuff that he taught to Ouspensky, and also what Fritz Peters lays out there in that sort of, I don't know, spoof interview, in the sense that no one can learn for someone else. Gurdjieff speaks a lot about understanding, right? We have to come to understanding, and no one can give us that understanding. No one can help us to understand more. They can try to, of course, and maybe I am trying to do that here at the channel, but it's for everyone as an individual to increase their understanding, and that can only come through efforts. So, yeah, reading and rereading and cross-referencing and attending these readings, and then reading and going out into life and observing, you would say also. It's not enough to just sit in the armchair reading. You have to be active in life and watch these things, you know. Voldemar has arrived. Hello there, Voldemar. I hope you're doing well. And says, greetings from planet Poland. Shall we be involved in protection and shaping of our neighborhood, or count it as mechanical distraction that we should not bother? Interesting question there, Voldemar. I would say it's very important, the local community, because that's our people, isn't it, if you like? And it definitely makes me think that I'm sure we could all be more active in our local community. But yeah, I think it is important, and I think the only change really that can happen is from grassroots, from bottom up rather than top down. So yeah, good question, Voldemar. But I suppose, what does your intuition tell you? What does your heart tell you? You know, do you think you could help to shape and protect the neighborhood, or do you think it's an impossible task? You know, and maybe even if you took it as an aim for a short period and observe and see if you can make any change, then see it as an experiment. Blasphemy Being Honest says, I'm in Sweden. I don't mind sharing. Well, that's very kind of you. Graham Fortune says, Unknowable Gurdjieff can be read as a standalone chapter. So, yeah, nice to know. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. Voldemar goes on to say, "Hi Graham, trying to decide to be anti-immigration Polish police or count it as mechanical part of surrounding that I was born in." And yes, of course, this is the one of the questions of the day, isn't it, for all those living in Europe. And again, I won't like I say, I'm not going to digress into a discussion on immigration, because that's will heavily detract us from the topic at hand. But it's an interesting question, isn't it, Voldemar, and a very important one. So, but I won't be touching that here. Blasphemy B. Nana says, "I'm reading 4 books right now, not all intellectual, but I read as much as I can." That's fantastic. And Flibbity Gibbets says, "Huh?" And what is that in reference to there, Mr. Thompson? That huh? What is that? A huh to. Chapter 3. In John G. Bennett's Gurdjieff Making a New World, the author writes, also available on the channel, and a wonderful exploration into Gurdjieff the man and his ideas. Okay, Flibbity Gibbets, fair enough. And yeah, like I say, it's a it's an interesting question. In John G. Bennett's Gurdjieff Making a New World, the author writes, quote, "At that time, circa 1923 to 1924, Jane Heap, who had come to the Priory with her 2 adopted sons, decided to leave them at the Priory, where they remained all through this period. One of them has written about his experiences, evidently unaware of the intensity of the events that were taking place around him." End quote. I take exception to this paragraph, not because Mr. Bennett felt free to assume that I was unaware of anything, but because Mr. Bennett, after reading the page proofs of Boyhood with Gurdjieff in 1964, wrote a glowing letter stating, among other things, quote, "It is a great coup, and it will be one of the most important books for helping people to understand what kind of man Gurdjieff was." End quote. That he, prior to his death, or at whatever point he wrote Making a New World, had become convinced of the intensity of the events taking place in the 20s is fully expressed in the quoted sentences. My only defense, if one is needed, is that while most of the persons who are interested in Gurdjieff now, which includes all the group members I have met, and they are legion, have become prophets of doom, I have yet to be convinced that this is essential to the teaching of the Gurdjieff work. An extremely good example of Gurdjieff's method is contained in another section of Venture with Ideas by Kenneth Walker, and I'm just going to read that again because I want to understand it further. Prophets of doom have become prophets of doom. I'll read the whole thing. My only defense, if one is needed, is that while most of the persons who are interested in Gurdjieff now, which includes all the group members I have met, and they are legion, have become prophets of doom, I have yet to be convinced that this is essential to the teaching of the Gurdjieff work. So I think there he's saying that sort of many people and participants in the Gurdjieff work are prophets of doom, and as he's said already in the earlier chapters, very serious, very somber prophets of doom. I would notice when I would attend groups very regularly for a number of years that it's like no one could do. They had accepted the maxim that man cannot do, and they had accepted it too fully. And so it's like, I can't do anything because man cannot do. And it's like, well, no, you have to try and do. You have to try and do. You have to try and be and do. So, who knows? Graham says, render unto Caesar things that are Caesar's, Voldemar. Don't identify with the circumstances you find yourself in. And, of course, Graham, very wise there, and that's right. If you identify with it, then sort of you get lost in it. You have to not identify with all of this stuff going on in the world. And you'll be a happier man for it. And Flibbity Gibbet says, maybe because technology is making us more mechanical. I would say yes. It certainly is. But anyway, this is another quote from Kenneth Walker's Venture with Ideas also, which I have and which we could read. I realize now that whatever... So this is Kenneth Walker. I realize now that whatever Gurdjieff did, he did for some purpose, and that these lunches and dinners had not been arranged merely for the enjoyment of eating and drinking, but to bring us closer together and into more intimate relationship with him. Too much theorizing was tending to make the minds of his London followers too rigid, and our behaviour too calculated and grim. Very interesting. We were in danger of acquiring the chapel-going faces of Plymouth brethren, and we needed loosening up. If anyone was fitted to bring about this loosening process, it was surely Gurdjieff, a man who had always lived life to its fullest and, as some people thought, to excess. Under the excellent treatment meted out to us in the Rue des Colonels Renard, our faces became relaxed, and any puritanical trends rapidly disappeared. It is necessary, Gurdjieff reminded us, to know when to be serious and when to laugh. He said that sleeping man was without any proper standards. He was solemn when it was wiser to be gay, and he was frivolous when it was necessary to be serious. In other words, he had no idea of the true significance and value of the different things he encountered in life. End quote. And hello there, Bunny Man, and greetings to you. And yes, Flibbity Gibbets. No, I don't know why. I think it's like a overly intellectual approach to the work, maybe, and that you have to be serious to understand. But anyway, it's all speculation, isn't it? How can we possibly know these things? It would be a large sociological exploration and research to find out, and I suppose we should all just focus more on working on ourselves, right, and waking up ourselves, rather than the sort of the issues among the Gurdjieff community. If there was one thing that Gurdjieff, in my experience, was not, he was certainly not a doom-seller. He was serious, but he did not have a long face about it, quite the opposite. When he once told me that time was short and that one's salvation had to be accomplished, if at all, as rapidly as possible, we both laughed when I said that I had decided that a grim face and a heavy heart were not vital equipment for development into a conscious or harmonious being with, potentially, a soul to be acquired through conscious effort. Why does soul-searching have to be lugubrious? People who are students these days are all desperate about the process, and sighs and groans and guilty consciences are apparently de rigueur. The long face and the whole grim attitude are almost like a uniform. As one man asked me recently, in July 1975, what are we supposed to do now that all the gods are dead? Frankly, I can only answer such questions literally. Which gods are you talking about, and when did they die? He did not care for this answer or question, and managed to convey with some hostility that he was jealous of me because, why was it that I, of all people, had had the opportunity to meet Gurdjieff rather than he? Such exchanges are, at best, exhausting as well as boring. I was living when Gurdjieff was in France. My interlocutor was not. I could only reply that an accident of birth, his or mine, was hardly something either of us could control, and I added somewhat maliciously that if he enjoyed his feeling of self-pity, it was all right with me for him to indulge in them. It was reported to me later that he felt I had been flippant with him. I agree. I am often flippant, particularly with so-called adults who want to mope their way to salvation or wherever they think Gurdjieff's work may lead them. Anyone who has read All and Everything must have stumbled across the following, quote, "All of us people are mortal, and every man may die at any moment. Now the question arises, can a man really picture to himself and so to say experience in his consciousness the process of his own death? No." End quote. Having lived with Gurdjieff, I do not attempt to refute what he says about all of us, except for myself. I learned once and for all and forever, that's nice. I learned once and for all and forever that as part of the anthill of humanity, I could hardly take the acquisition of my own soul very seriously. A drop of water, see all and everything again, is not that important, and the whole process, at least from one point of view, is a joke. Nature's or God's, but in any event, a joke perpetrated by something or someone much bigger than I am. I am told by practically everyone today that the world is rapidly going to hell. I fail to see that suffering about that possibility and looking grim about it is going to alter the destination, and it seems to me that anyone who takes a trip on an airplane is potentially at least accepting the possibility of death. Why single out airplanes? Only because air crashes are more spectacular than being killed in automobile crashes, falling from ladders in the kitchen, etc. We live with the possibility of death every day. Are we supposed to be permanently depressed about it? Some interesting lines of inquiry there, isn't it? The people that he encounters and who come to him sort of as an authority, he obviously doesn't like that very much, Fritz Peters, and as he says there, he's flippant. He's very flippant with adults who, what does he say? That I've been flippant with him, I agree. I'm often flippant, particularly with so-called adults who want to mope their way to salvation or whatever they think Gurdjieff's work may lead them. And that's a nice phrase, isn't it? Who want to mope their way to salvation or wherever they think Gurdjieff's work may lead them. So, yeah, life's to be lived, isn't it? You don't have to be so serious all the time. Bunnyman liked Graham's advice about not identifying. Blasphemy B. Nana says, what if the circumstances you find yourself in are beyond your control? Even more reason to not identify. And there is a great Christian prayer called the Serenity Prayer that I very much like, and I can share if you'd like it to hear it. But that is is not, Gurdjieff never taught the Serenity Prayer, but it's very very helpful when in difficult times. Voldemar says, yes, Graham, we are renting timely only this experience on Earth. Not too much we can do outside of ourselves, surface on planet Earth to serve the moon. So yes. And Bunnyman said, that's a good question, Blasphemy. All I can do in a situation like that, you can find out what you're really made of. And Graham has sort of paraphrased the Serenity Prayer there. Do you know it, Graham? Do you know the Serenity Prayer, and are you paraphrasing it? Graham says, deal with the circumstances that you can control, forget the ones you can't. Blasphemy Nana. And so, yeah, that's sort of a paraphrasing of the Serenity Prayer that I'll read because Bunny Man wants to hear it. And hello there, Sophia. Sophia says here, better late than never. Hell yeah, it's better late than never. And thanks for coming in. And it's lovely to see you. So here is the Serenity Prayer. And you may have, you sort of may have heard it. There's a longer version, but I'll just read the famous section. Oh no, well, it's funny, Graham. Graham says he doesn't know the prayer, but as I say, you've paraphrased it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So Graham says, deal with the circumstances that you can control and forget the ones you can't. And again, that's a very nice, succinct, abridged version of the Serenity Prayer. I'll repeat it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And maybe the wisdom section at the end is the most important bit because, of course, who's to say what you can and cannot change? It's up to one as an individual. So, Blasphemy Binana says, I'll get really personal. I was diagnosed with GBS. I'm healing and getting stronger, but it was the hardest I've worked for anything in my life. Well, that's, what's the other pithy saying? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So the experience that you've had is obviously you're still alive and thriving and learning and growing. And so you could argue that it's, well, it might be a bit strong to say it was a good thing, but, you know, it's making you who you are. And Stephen Lahn offers a bit of advice. Yes, you've put do leave, but I imagine, Stephen, you meant don't, because it reads, yes, do leave awakening until your 80th birthday. And did you mean don't leave awakening until your 80th birthday, Stephen? Or should we just leave off until we're 80? Bunnyman says, blasphemy, I can't lie. I don't know what GBS is. I'm rooting for you in this challenging time for you. You got this. And Bunnyman appreciated the Serenity Prayer. And like I say, it's if you're going through a hard time, then why not recite it each and every morning, right? And throughout the day. So I think we'll read 2 more chapters, 4 and 5, and then we'll leave it and come back on Monday for another few sections and to learn some more about being a balanced man or balanced person. We might have to say nowadays to be PC, but let's continue. Chapter 4. To take up the question of heirs to Gurdjieff's work. Very interesting. To take up the question of heirs to Gurdjieff's work, I think it is undeniable that everyone who spent any time with him is some sort of heir, or more abstractly, a repository of the effects of Gurdjieff. He acted on people and they received whatever he was able to deposit with them, limited, I think, only by their ability to receive. Their receptivity is a key factor. One absorbs to the extent one is able to do so. So in that sense, what individuals got from him varies. It is my conclusion that the children who were at the Priory in the 1920s were more receptive than anyone else. This is not because I have discovered in the course of becoming an adult that those children know more or are in any sense better human beings than other persons who at some point had actual contact with Gurdjieff. I exclude people who had only brief and primarily intellectual contact with him. Such individuals or groups did not, there is simply no question about it, have the opportunity to experience the man as a whole. The people who were long-time residents of the Priory had a relationship with Gurdjieff that was never duplicated in any other physical situation. The children who stayed at the Priory for a fairly long time during the 20s were basically just there. It was not their intention, search or need that brought them there. The ones I remember were Gurdjieff's nieces and nephew, the de Salzman children, Dr. Sternvoll's son, a boy named Tolik Mokorov, and my brother Tom and myself. There may have been others, but I don't think so. I have included the main ones. I think it is important to remember that the children were what might be called chance victims of the Messiah, or whatever Gurdjieff was supposed to be. We had no choice in the matter, and were treated, for the most part, simply as children. Present-day seekers should also remember that we were inevitably exposed to everything that took place during those years. We watched the Uspenskis, Bennetts, Orages, Jane Heaps, Jean Toombs, etc. come and go. But we were there all the time. We have, perhaps for this reason alone, a sense of continuity and belonging about the Priory and about Gurdjieff himself that, as far as I can say honestly, no one else ever experienced. Oh, hello there, Alex. Thanks for popping in and saying hello and enjoy the catch up. He was, of course, respected by us, and we even held him in awe, but rather in the sense that children are somewhat overawed by headmasters, not, however, as a herald of coming good. Tom and I certainly had been told that he was something special, different, great, a mystic, or a messiah. But speaking for myself alone, whatever the epithet and at age 11 I didn't know what a messiah was anyway, he was a man at home. He lived there most of the time, and he did whatever else he may have been doing, what people do in their own homes. I stress this point because I seriously doubt that any of the group leaders today, apart from Madame de Salzman and perhaps one or two others, also had that kind of experience with Gurdjieff. He was, to me, first of all, a human being. When you clean someone's room every day, that person is perforce relegated to a universal norm that is comprehensible to us all. He used the bathroom for all the usual purposes. And that's sort of, again, an interesting point, isn't it? A data point that maybe that's why he gave Fritz Peters that job, so that he saw him as a human, as a man. He used the bathroom for all the usual purposes. Also, being an outgoing and affectionate man by nature, he was good to the children, a perfectly natural and ordinary response. He adapted himself to our level, took our problems seriously, or at least listened to them as a parent would, ideally. So I can only conclude that I am without question an heir to what could well be the next question, and my answer would have to be a simple one. To some part of his nature. Part of his nature is in me for the very simple reason that he did not necessarily fill my mind or intellect with anything. He influenced me in the same way that parents influence any child. I do accept myself from the other children, I do accept myself from the other children to this extent. He picked me specifically to be his personal attendant, body slave, room cleaner, call it what you will. And he gave me the affection, love and attention that my own parents and my adoptive parents, Jane Heap and Margaret Anderson, had not given me. In view of his stature in the occult world today, I'm not surprised that some people envy me my time with him. However, I'm disturbed at their assumption that I know something about his ideas. Naturally, I know something about them, but I am not and never have been an intellectual. Why Gurdjieff had a mission or had to establish a school is beyond me. I simply accept at face value that he was Beelzebub, and apparently sent by someone or something to do something about this planet. The idea is no more startling to me than the stories about unidentified flying objects or the fact that men have walked on the moon. So I'll read that again because, well, I simply accept at face value that he was Beelzebub and apparently sent by someone or something to do something about this planet. And I'll finish, there's one more paragraph and then we'll return to that. Gurdjieff was also, according to some people, a man called Gurdjieff, who defended Tibet when it was invaded by England. He himself said with a malicious grin on his face that he was also Rasputin. Maybe he was. Frankly, I neither know nor in the long run care. He was the most sensible, logical, interesting, benevolent, wise, coarse, gross, obscene, funny, and all-round human being I have ever encountered in my life, or ever expect to run into. In fact, one is enough. Wow. What's going on in the chat? Blasphemy B Nana talking about GBS says it's a neurological autoimmune disease, but I'm alive and been learning more about myself. So fantastic news, Blasphemy B Nana. That's the attitude. I think attitude and perspective can take us a long way in this life. And as Fritz Peters was saying, moping your way into paradise, or whatever the phrase he used, you know, moping your way to enlightenment. What did he say? I need to find the phrase now. Moping their way to salvation. So it's, yeah, that's no fun for anyone. And yes, Bunny Man, Monday, that's long as hell, Lewis. I apologize for that, Bunny Man, but I've got a busy weekend coming up. And what I would advise, Bunny Man, is go into the playlist section of the channel, or the live reads playlist, and have a scroll and comment if you find anything that's interesting for you and you listen. Be sure to comment, and I'd advise everyone else who hasn't caught up on everything on the channel to have a scroll and see if any books jump out at you. And I'm glad that book club has been good for the soul. Blasphemy B Nana. So fantastic. Yes. Blasphemy B Nana says, I stopped asking why this happened and started asking what I can learn from it. So again, back to perspective. And in hypnotherapy, and it would be a reframing. Simply by reframing something that's happened or is going on, you can sort of change it. There's several people that I work with who are very busy, and sometimes they get really, they forget themselves. They fall asleep and they say, I have to do this, I have to do that, then that. And then I say, if you just reframe it and say, I get to do this, then it's you just by changing the phrase from I have to I get to, or have the opportunity to, then you've reframed it and it's a completely different approach. So yes, you're doing big things, Blasphemy B Nana. Flippity Gibbet says, I'm not an expert on Gurdjieff, but these people turning him into a guru seem to be the opposite of his message of not being mechanical. And yeah, I think that's right. I think he didn't want that. That much is clear. Flippity Gibbets, from all of the biographical books about him, he never would set himself up as the guru. But by nature, that's what people will do, right? He's got the answers. Everyone's asking him the questions. He's the leader, so he gets put on the pedestal. But as I'm going to read this bit again, I accept, says Fritz Peters, at face value that he was Beelzebub and apparently sent by someone or something to do something about this planet. And just to say one more thing, really, Gurdjieff has done his work. He's had his time, hasn't he? He's left his tales to the grandchildren, everyone here watching and listening. And so Gurdjieff did his work. And now it's in a sense up to us, the grandchildren, the generations that have come after. I don't know, Gurdjieff died in 1950, I think, 49 or 50. And so, yeah, anyone that was with him obviously would have to be over 75 now by nature. If you were 1 when he died, you'll be 75 now. And so it's unlikely that we have many people who were in direct contact with Gurdjieff, and we can only hope, there's people that were with the people that were with Gurdjieff, like second generation. But if it was important to have been physically present with Gurdjieff, we should all just give up, right? Because there's no way we can do that. But through the books in Beelzebub, there's this term Hamblzoin, and it's almost like one's blood or the blood of the astral body that can be sort of sent across time. And that's what I think is happening when you read Beelzebub's tales, or when you read a biography or a book about Gurdjieff. You're in a sense receiving, I don't know if you want to call it energy or vibrations, or it's all a bit woo-woo, but not if you've read all the Gurdjieff books, it's not. But yeah, last chapter of this evening, my friends, chapter 5. What Gurdjieff literally hammered into me as a child was that death, whatever else it may be, is inevitable. It is one's ultimate and only destination. It is largely thanks to this knowledge, or the innate understanding of this fact, that every minute, hour, or day is something one should experience fully. It's worth repeating. I not only know in my mind, but understand in my blood that I may very well be run over or killed or whatever if I should venture out into the street for lunch. This is not a meaningless statement. It produces two kinds of awareness. The first is that I will do my best to be sufficiently aware of what I am doing when I go out in order not to be maimed or killed, and the second merely reinforces the state of awareness which the first produces. Get everything out of whatever you may be doing at the moment, so that you will not, as it were, be either unconscious or unaware when you do meet your end. And as Blasphemy B. Nana has kindly shared their personal experience in the chat, oftentimes it's only when we're very ill, when we have a rub up against death, when the Grim Reaper brushes us on the shoulder, that we really begin to appreciate life. And then oftentimes we forget about it very quickly and we just become mechanical again. So yeah, obviously when you're aware and conscious and awake, yeah, life, as he's saying there, get everything out of whatever you may be doing at the moment. And that's a very nice way of phrasing things. Through Gurdjieff, I came to understand that life, like an arrow, is aimed at one target, death. It, life, may have myriad bypaths, diversions, or dreams along the way, but the final destination is the grave. Gurdjieff speaks of this frequently in his own books. In fact, it is almost overemphasized, although I doubt that the average reader takes in the message fully. For example, the following is an extract from All and Everything. Quote, "Such is the ordinary average man, an unconscious slave of the whole entire service to all universal purposes which are alien to his own personal individuality. He may live through all his years as he is, and as such be destroyed forever. But at the same time, great nature has given the possibility of being not merely a blind tool of the whole of the entire service to these all universal objective purposes, but while serving her and actualizing what is foreordained for him, which is the lot of every breathing creature, of working at the same time also for himself, for his own egoistic individuality. End quote. And there's another quote. The chief difficulty in the way of liberation from whole entire slavery consists in this, that it is necessary with an intention issuing from one's own initiative and persistence and sustained by one's person's own efforts, to obtain the eradication from one's presence both of the already fixed consequences of certain properties of that something in our forefathers called the organ Kundabuffer, as well as of the predisposition of those consequences which might again arise. End quote. And there's a note about the organ Kundabuffer, and Peters says, an organ introduced or injected purposely into the human race, Kundry, in Wagner's Parsifal, a mythical woman who, having laughed at Jesus while he was carrying the cross, is doomed for ages to helpless remorse. And there's some more quotes. I think, lots of quotes for all and everything, and I'll carry on. But Voldemar says, interesting position we are in, just to have manual and the car to fix without the experience. So, Gurdjieff says, I think, very early on in Search of the Miraculous to Ouspensky, the work is to understand one's position. You know, you can study man and man's place in the universe, in the overall system. You could say the ray of creation, the food diagram, all of these keys or perspectives to view the world. And I would argue that any worldview and belief system helps to navigate, right? Although you wouldn't say Gurdjieff's work is a belief system, because he says that you have to verify everything. There's no belief involved. So, again, there's many people in the chat I know who have been involved in the work for many years, and I'm sure it's objective truth for them, right? Excuse me. It's objective. They've verified it so much. They've learnt, experienced, and understood the terms, the teachings, the exercises, everything, and so it's more objective than belief now, I would say, for many people. Blasphemy Binana says, at some point everything becomes mechanical, right? A large group wants to know what he knew. I'm not sure. I think it's Gurdjieff spoke about evolution and devolution. Gurdjieff says nothing is ever stationary. We're either evolving or devolving. And so what you say is true in a sense. Without any consciousness or effort, things tend towards mechanicalness and automaticity. And so one needs to actively participate in order to continue to wake up or to wake up. So a bunny man asks, where are you from, Lewis? I am from London. I grew up just outside of London, a place called Harrow. Harrow on the Hill, Harrow School. So I grew up around there and lived and worked for many years in Harrow. And now I have relocated to the Midlands, and I live in a little town called Corby in Northamptonshire. And I love it. So that's where I'm streaming from, Corby, but I grew up in Harrow. So I'll carry on. Another quote. These are all quotes. Quote, all of us people are mortal, and every man may die at any moment. Think what would happen to a man who clearly pictured to himself and lives through the inevitability of his own death. Individually, the life of every man up to his reaching responsible age corresponds to a drop of water in the initial flow of a river, and the place where the dividing of the waters occurs corresponds to the time when he attains adulthood." End quote. For the drop itself, for the drops, there is not a separate predetermination of their personal fate. A predetermined fate is for the whole river only. At the beginning of the flow of the river, the lives of drops are here one moment, there the next moment, and a moment later they might not at all be as they are, but splashed out of the river and evaporated. And that's very interesting as well, right? There is not a separate predetermination of their personal fate. The drops themselves, each individual human being, a predetermined fate is for the whole river only, for the whole of humanity only. So, hey, no need to apologize. Blasphemy be Nana. It's no problem at all. We're inquiry is the best way to help with understanding. So there's no silly questions, is there? A man who has in his common presence his own I enters one of the streams of the river of life, and the man who has not enters the other. In other words, it is necessary to become dead to what has become for you your ordinary life. It is just this death that is spoken of in all religions. If you do not die, you will not be resurrected. The death referred to is not the death of the body, since for such a death there is no need for resurrection. For if there is a soul, and moreover an immortal soul, it can dispense with the resurrection of the body. End quote. And I found a meme the other day, actually. I'm going to read it out because it relates to this. It is attributed to, where is it? It's attributed to Mark Twain. And the quote is, "Most men die at 27. We just bury them at 72. So that is again alluding to how people go through life asleep as machines. And they live a whole life asleep. And then death approaches and they begin to realize that they've wasted a whole life. And yeah, this is, I don't know if you'd call it morbid. It's, I think it's meant to stir one to activity, isn't it? Not to drift through life as a machine, and to awaken the machine and to be active. I'm glad you think so, JK Techers. And again, we have to, it's up to us as individuals, isn't it? No one can work for us. No one can do it for us. Not Gurdjieff, not Jesus, maybe Jesus if you are devoted to him and are a Christian, but we still have to do it. Stephen Lance says, no, it's evolving or involving. To devolve is to localize and disperse central government into local government. So, yeah, perhaps that's a better term. I use the term devolve, and maybe involve, as Stephen points out, is better. So thanks for that, Stephen. Blasphemy Binana says, there's a documentary on Netflix about a man who's aging backwards in a scientific sense. I haven't finished it, but it's interesting. Yeah, there's lots of people. Many people are now approaching aging as a disease, and that, like any other disease, if you had cancer or inflammation or any other disease, you'd want to cure yourself of it. And so these nutters, there's many of them. One man, I think he's spending millions of dollars a year to reduce his age or to bring his age down, and they see it as it's a disease. I'm dying, I'm getting old. I don't want to. I want to, live forever, and so I want to heal myself. So Voldemar says, friend of mine died 3 months ago. He almost woke up. His wife have Ouspensky booked now, upon my advice. Well, again, sorry to hear that. I'm very sad for your friend who almost woke up. And that's the thing, isn't it? Almost is not enough, really. Bunnyman says we must start acting like babies now. J.K. Tucker says that is also a very interesting phrase that you have used more than once this evening, Lewis. It's up to us. I want to suggest a reference at the end of the reading this evening in connection with this phrase. Well, I look forward to hearing that, J.K. Tuckers. There's just a couple of pages to go, 2 or 3 pages to go, and I look forward to hearing that phrase. And yeah, of course, I'll comment on that when you share it. But anyway, back to the last few pages. Serious stuff, I agree, but also exciting. The implication of those paragraphs for me is that there really is a way out of this mortal coil. All you have to do is work. It's up to you. And I also happen to think that the daily process of living and working hard is a lot more exciting than any TV program, or in a more modern sense, any social media, news feed, and doom scrolling. The greatest difficulty would appear to be to begin to work, with or without some sort of leader. It is not unlike the problem of the novelist faced with that first dreaded blank sheet of paper and the knowledge that, at least potentially, what is written there may someday be read by an infinite number of readers. How is it possible to convey an exact meaning to others, all of whom interpret language through their own life experience? How to define a specific aspect of the word love, for example? It may end up being necessary to write an entire paragraph in order to achieve precision. The same thing is going to be true of anyone beginning work on oneself. How can we begin to destroy the habit patterns which have been acquired through our lifetime and try to replace them with intentionally useful and harmonious habits? How do we become dead to what has become for you your ordinary life? It involves a kind of punishing effort that could almost be called brute force and mercilessness. The despair that some people experience in the emptiness of their lives can only be altered by a discipline that is, in the proper sense of that word, ruthless. One exercise that may sound simple will serve as a good demonstration of the way our weaknesses can and do prevent us from ever beginning work. So here is an exercise that one can try. Make a program for yourself every day. Make it thoughtfully, trying not to be over-ambitious and also avoiding the trap of not giving yourself enough to do for that day. Write it down, hour by hour, trying to estimate thoughtfully exactly what you will be able to accomplish in a given period of time. Depending upon one's outer life circumstances, it is important to allow for whatever interruptions your lifestyle or your profession may impose on you in any given period of time. A telephone call, for example, can disrupt an entire day unless you are determined to be in control of the call and the caller. It is a good idea to allow some free time to help with just such contingencies as the telephone, unexpected interruptions, and the like. At the end of the day, review in detail exactly what you did do as opposed to what you set out to do, and don't be depressed by the results. Depression is just another form of letting one's emotions get the upper hand. But punish yourself for the things you did not accomplish and then forget it. How punish yourself? Make the punishment fit the crime. If you are a smoker, do not allow yourself that cigarette with your coffee after dinner. If you drink, skip the evening cocktail. But do these things consciously in the knowledge that you are giving up these small but necessary pleasures because you have failed in something you set out to do. Punishing yourself this way may sound childish and even idiotic, But remember that what you are dealing with, the mechanism that is you, is like a child who has acquired messy habits and who behaves in general completely unconsciously. Children are, or at least should be, punished for infractions of the general rules of life which make life bearable among other human beings. In this case, you are the child. The exercise can be boring and seem useless, and it is important not to expect results. Expect what you get and learn how difficult it is to discipline the machine. It may not sound very esoteric or occult to perform this sort of seemingly mundane exercise, but it will do a great deal more for the eventual discipline of the body, not to mention the emotions and the mind, than any amount of prayer or meditation. Whew. And so you can go back and listen to that again, this last section, for the details of that exercise, which is in many different philosophies and religious traditions. So you can take that up yourself and perform it, of course, with intensity and intention and effort, and see what happens, experience it. So yes, J.K. Techers, please share, suggest a reference for us. Please, if you're still there listening, I'm very interested. Because, yeah, another sort of phrase related to that is, what can I do? You know, I'm saying it's up to us. But someone then can say, but what can I do? But what can I do? So these two things. And anyway, yes, J.K. Techers, certainly. I think it's Fritz Peters. Fritz Peters. He's an inspiration, I think, for the channel. But anyway, Graham Fortune says the moon must see humanity as one large animal and cannot see individuals, and that our greatest chance to escape the pull of the moon. I agree, and it brings to mind there, Graham, Gurdjieff's sort of metaphor of a fish. If the fishermen are catching fish with a giant net, you know, they trawl the ocean and they collect up all the fish together collectively, so you've got a giant net full of fish. If one or two little fishies escape, the fisherman won't know. If even 10 or 20 fish escape, the fisherman won't know. Whereas if every fish escaped from the net, the fisherman would become suspicious and say, hey, what the hell's going on down there? And they'd investigate, and probably, it would be a worse fate for the fish. And so, yes, very interesting. So, Blasphemy Binana says, Bunny, are you in the Discord? I know you said that you meditate. I wanted to know your technique because my mind never stops. So, yeah, is there anyone who's interested in joining the Discord? We've had a few new members. And so if you're interested, send me an email and I'll send you the link and you can come in, and starting maybe there's a few contributors in there, and perhaps with a few more we can get it off the ground and build community again. It was going very well for some time, and I will continue to read. J.K. Tucker says, you may be familiar with the name Jessamine Howarth. Jessamine had a daughter called Dushanbe, or Dushka. Dushka wrote a book called It Is Up to Us. Oh, wow. Very interesting, J.K. Techers. It is up to us, eh? Sorry, Sophia, I've missed your comment there. Sophia says, this is the description of the process of transforming something not too complex, though maybe not easy to do, because it never is, but it's a good description. And so, yes, but like Fritz Peters saying there, it's a very simple exercise and you can do it. Oh, wow. Yeah, lots going on in the chat, actually. It's fantastic, and thanks all for being here. Voldemar says, interesting schedule. Plan everything with details and intention. I will call it G-Plan. And also in the, I'm not going to share it or read it on the channel because it's a newly published book, Joseph Azizi, but in there he speaks about the preparation, and it's very profound. So maybe if you reach out to me privately via email, we'll get into that. But you can almost intensify this planning through the state that you're in, Gurdjieff would say, and this Joseph Azizi. So you can sort of take it, there's levels to the game, you can say. Stephen Lance says, the only reason that we have petrol or gasoline in our cars is because the oil business pays duty to the government, which buys guns and ships. Cars run better on water, but it costs nothing. Well, there's quite the conspiracy theory there, Stephen Lane, but I think you're right. You hear about these things, don't you? Someone's got a cure for cancer. They've got a cure for cancer and they're going to publish the paper. Oh no, they went off the road and crashed into a tree. Oh well, how terrible. And all their papers were in the boot. And now it's all gone. We've lost the cure for cancer, damn it. And yeah, I agree with that sentiment though, Stephen, that the governments of course want to make their money, don't they? I'm going to look it up now, JK Techers, before we go, and read a little bit about it. Sophia asks, what is the difference between the Discord and this chat? The Discord server, Sophia, is an app, or you can access it through a browser, and it's like, if you like, the Discord is a perpetual chat. So this chat is only active when we're here live. When I shut the stream down, the chat closes down and you can't chat anymore. Whereas in the Discord server, people are there now. I don't know if anyone's there chatting, but if everyone wanted to, let's say everyone in the live chat was also in the Discord, when I say bye, see you next time, and shut the stream down, everyone could just go onto Discord and continue talking. And that's what it is. It's a chat forum would be the best way to describe it, Sophia. So if you're interested, I can help you set that up. It can be quite intense because it's sort of, you have to be mindful of how you interact with it, because if there's hundreds of people in there, there's not. But if there was, there's notifications coming through all the time, and there can be an element of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So it has its pros and cons, let's say. Johnny Fettler says, good evening, folks. I've enjoyed the reading and the chat comments. Most appreciated. Yeah, I second that. Johnny Fettler. It's amazing. And let me have a look at this. Dushka. It's up to us. Oh, it's up to ourselves. It says here, JK Techers, it's up to ourselves. So yeah. No, it's okay, JK Techers, no problem. It's up to ourselves, a mother, a daughter, and Gurdjieff. No, that's something different. No, maybe it's not. But anyway, I will look up to that, JK Techers, and of course, get myself a copy. And yeah. Hello there, series of letters, who says, can I increase the volume? I can't really. I'm as loud as I can be. So perhaps you're going to have to get a speaker or some headphones to help you with your volume, because I think, as far as I'm aware, for other people it's not an issue. So sorry about that. Blasphemy Binana says, thank you for tonight. You're welcome. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for being here. Graham is exhorting Sophia, join the Discord, Sophia. So, Sophia, reach out via email. I'll send you the link, and again, I can help you to set it up and to navigate, because it is quite alien if you've not done it before. And J.K. Teckers says, also try Gurdjieff Heritage Society. J.K. Teckers, have you read Joseph Azizi's book yet? Joseph Azizi, what's his... it has a funny title. It's Gurdjieff. Joseph... I'm sorry. Azizi. Yeah. Gurdjieff, Mysticism, Contemplation and Exercises. J.K. Teckers, I'd highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. Because it, for me anyway, it's the best Gurdjieff book I've read in many years. And it has given me a new sort of perspective on Gurdjieff, the sort of flow of his teachings, how they shifted and morphed over time. And it's a really great... it's a really great sort of bit of research, I would say, more than a book. So anyone else in the chat, if you're interested in joining the Discord, reach out to me via email. Like I said, I don't want to just put it, I could put it in the live chat here, but then I think it's too easy. And then, like Gurdjieff says, you know, there has to be a bit of a barrier, excuse me, and that barrier is very low because you just send me an email and I'll reply with the Discord link. So it's not a very high barrier to enter. There is also a private room with several of us working together and sort of making efforts, but that's a private group and one can be admitted if they want to work hard, so and work seriously and diligently. So lots going on. I've got lots of things happening in the background as well that I'll share as and when they come. But for now, Reported Stolen says, salutations, lovely people. I'll echo that sentiment and I'll say thank you ever so much for being here, for joining. Fritz Peters definitely has a way of getting the chat bubbling, of getting me commenting and talking, and of bringing us all together. So, hallelujah and praise be to Fritz Peters and to Mr. Gurdjieff. And I look forward to being with you again on Monday, 9 p.m, where we'll continue. Tuesday, we may dip into Ouspensky for a change, but so much coming up here at Book Club. So if you're not yet, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything, and consider giving a share on your social media if you have one, because that's the best way. You know, word of mouth is the best form of advertisement, and I'm not very good at advertisement, so I'd really appreciate it if you would help. Anyway, friends. Wowzers. I don't know about that, Bunny Man, but come join the Discord and we'll start the process there. I think we have to do it as a collective. Yes, Sophia, enjoy the catch up. You're welcome, J.K. Teckers. Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend. Look after yourselves. Go back and watch. Go back and watch something that you haven't watched and you've been meaning to watch. There's a huge library here at Book Club, so go back and catch up. Let me know where you are and what you're catching up on and what you thought about it in the comments. I'm still able, God willing, to read all of the comments, and so I would love to hear that. Stephen Lance says, I remember my teacher said we can't give out the work over the phone. So yes, Stephen, very interesting. And so Graham goes on to say, Joseph Azizi has done some podcasts. A good one is found on Mind Matters channel. He's done, several, Graham, over, there's a couple from when he released the book, and a couple more recently. But yes, I'd recommend those. It's a lot easier access than purchasing the book. So on YouTube, Joseph Azizi, Mind Matters, you can listen to him speaking about the book. And then more recently, I think he's speaking about death and preparing for death. And so much to be getting on with. But I'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, like I say, I'll really be interested if you go and listen to something, some of the historical library here at Book Club. Let me know in the comments. If you want to join the Discord, send me an email. But for now, good night, God bless, have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday where we'll continue Balanced Man. Take care, guys. See you soon.